Hey guys, welcome back to Seller Sessions on a Saturday. Women of Amazon in depth with Athena Severi. Hey Athena, how you doing?
I'm great, Danny. Thanks so much for having me.
You are welcome. So today we're going to do an in-depth profile. We're going to chart your history from childhood to where you have arrived to today. Just quickly, do you want to let the guys know what you've been up to in the last couple of weeks while I'll just share this to the groups, if that's okay?
Yeah, sure. So I'm here in Clearwater, Florida, and we've been finding any little park or any way to kind of connect with nature. Been luckily, because of Zoom and the internet, staying connected to my network and just getting a lot of work done and spending a lot of time with my family. So it's actually been quite lovely. And you, Danny?
Yeah, no, I've been here every day. This is day 61 in a row,
Yes,
isn't
you
it? So,
have.
yeah.
You rock star, you.
Do you know what we've done? Do you know what we've done this morning?
What?
I sat down with well, not sat down. We spoke on Zoom with one of my team, and I said to them, "Have a look in the Guinness Book of Records to see if there's how many consecutive Facebook lives has been done." So
You win.
we're now applying for that. So basically, it doesn't show up. I think there's the longest podcast or the longest live, which I think the podcast was like 3 days long, this lunatic done. But I want to see if we can get in there to see if the most consecutive shows in a row. So we're going to soon find out. But right, so I've shared to the groups. Let's have a look who's here. 1 second, and then we shall get into you. Florence here, Singh is here, Abigail's here, Yarrow is here, Andrew Kramer. Yarrow says 61 and yes, meaning about the shows, not my age. Abigail says that is hysterical. Hello, lovelies from Abigail, Brisbane, sorry, Florin, who lives in Brisbane. Good morning, my lovelies. Great to see you both. I think you've met Florin as well, Athena, when we were in China in October. I'm sure I introduced you or you knew each other already. But yes, Cindy's joined as well. Kian Golzari is here as well.
My brother, Kian.
Cool. Right, let's get into it. So take us back, way back. Childhood, first childhood memory with regards to entrepreneurship. Did it come from the family or?
I've been born an entrepreneur. I remember being 3 years old and my grandmother used to play a game with me called Market. And the game was I had a little cart and I had to sell every item in that cart to her at the highest price that I could possibly sell it to her. And she would try to bring down the price, right? And then we would switch and I'd have to bring the price down while she would try to sell it to me. And this was like one of my favorite games. Like I would play this game for hours. I would sell anything I could. I would develop any sort of show that I could. I would perform and I would sing Over the Rainbow and ask people how much they liked my performance and how much it was worth to them. I mean, I think
you're getting your value in the early doors. How old was you then when this was happening?
4.
4.
Yes.
So you're literally doing entrepreneurship at 4 years old. So you're asking for critical feedback of your singing, and 2, you're asking the value of what it's worth in financial terms, and you're 4 years old.
And I realized that if I rode a tricycle while singing, I made more.
Right. Okay.
So that helped. And then I literally would take my stuffed animals and put them all around my bed and lecture to them.
Wow. Okay. that right there sounds crazy, but I love it. So where did this craziness at 4 come from? Is it a family trait or is it just unique within the family?
Well, my parents are artists, and they are very.
That makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. Honestly.
My parents are artists, and they would celebrate me, and they'd celebrate my ability to talk to strangers. They would celebrate if I would perform, if I would anything. I had a lot of love as a child, and thank God, because I think anyone else would have been like, oh my gosh, and tried to break my spirit, basically. And I have quite the opposite, which I'm very lucky to have had.
So you found out that, you know, when you look back on it now, is a way for them to enable you, you know, it's like they encouraged that. So you're saying that they're artists in terms of what were they, musicians or they painters or what were they?
Yeah, my dad's a music producer. He had a studio on Ventura Boulevard in Los Angeles during the heyday. I mean, Stevie Wonder, we had all kinds of major artists in there. So I would hang out with these celebrities and stuff from a very young age in this studio. That was quite remarkable. He had this beautiful white piano that he would say was mine. I really don't think it was, but he would.
Not at 4 anyway. Yeah,
he would say.
Big for you at 4, was it a grand piano? Yeah.
I had a beautiful white grand piano, and my mom is an actual actress. She came from Mexico City, beautiful Latin woman who came to LA, and they met at an event. So that's actually how my parents met. And so they're both very spiritual artists, just very good people. So yeah, I was very lucky to have them growing up.
Cool. And who was the most influential person around that time? We were starting at 4, but going up. Was it your mum or your dad equally so? Where did you take a lot of your traits from, do you think?
Both. My dad's crazy. You know, he would start businesses, and like as an example, he decided he was going to be a producer of concerts. And so he just decided that was going to happen, and then he did. You know, he contacts major, I mean, as of today, like he contacts major hip hop artists and remixes and sells it to Europe. Like, I think he's probably a bit more of the influence in terms of the entrepreneur vibe, whereas my mom has been a really strong woman character for me, as a mother, as a woman. You know, she doesn't put up with crap. She's always very much a queen. So, yeah, there
Excellent.
you go.
So we've started at 4. Moving on, let's say we're going. I mean, you started bloody young, so it's like I'm thinking, yeah, when you're 12 and you have your lemonade stand and stuff. But there's a paradigm shift between there and 12. So let's fast forward over that period to 12. You went to school. Was you academic? Did you enjoy school? Or was you?
Yeah. If you don't mind, I can take you to a very significant.
Let's go there.
For me, so. At 4, 5, 6, I was in a very lovely private school. I even created this whole world called the Original Dolphins, and I was the dolphin princess, and everyone was part of this world, and I would just create all these kind of universes. So you would see my community building from like very young. My parents divorced, and I moved to Mexico around 6 years old, and I was heavily bullied for being American, actually. And what that did is I grew up as a young girl.
What is that, in a Mexican school, even though of descent, you're Mexican descent, but in
a private school, it was a lovely school, but they just would tear me apart for being American, for having an accent, for a lot of things. So it went from this very empowered, very young age to basically having to physically fight for myself. And it was a bit intense. My parents divorced. I had a new stepfather, a new brother, a new country, a new language, all within a very short amount of time. And my new father, they kind of struggled financially. So I went from being very well off, a princess with a silver spoon, to sort of feeling like I had to hustle myself and sort of protect myself. So that was definitely a big shift from one sort of vibe to another around that time. And it took years for me to kind of build my confidence back, to be honest.
Yeah, no, it will do, especially that's a shatter for any child. I had the similar kind of things growing up where you go from the feast to famine kind of thing. It's a very, very difficult shift to understand at such a young age. So we're in Mexico now, right? So you've gone back. Where were you? You were based in LA. And then there's separation.
They separated my new stepfather and brother and all that, and then a second brother. And then we're back in LA, and I went back to like a private school, and I found some really dear friends who I am still in touch with to this day, even though I was, 8, 9 years old. So that was a nice period of my life. I've never been good at school. I would avoid school like the plague. I loved fundraisers. I would go really hardcore, very competitive I had to win. And a lot of these kids were very well off. So their parents would give, thousands of dollars to their fundraiser. And I didn't have that. So I would go door to door, selling raffle tickets, selling wrapping paper, anything. And I remember one time I was really ill. It was raining and I was about 10 years old. And I just went door to door and I was not going to let anyone win. So I I had to like, yeah. So I loved fundraisers. I loved anything I could do that had to do with people. I'd get in trouble all the time for speaking in class and for creating sort of rebellions within the school with the other kids.
Yeah.
So, school was
So
very
you were at that age, you were stirring up the pot at
I was
school.
stirring up the pot. I had a permanent spot in detention.
Yeah.
I was a good girl. I never did drugs. I still have never touched a drug in my life. I was not promiscuous or anything like that, but I was always just trying to rebel somehow against the status quo and question authority and all those things. So yeah. Was
it as well because you was very inquisitive? So you're always asking the whys and the questions.
Oh, 100%, 100%. And I hated conformity. I hated being, to sit in one place and not be allowed to go and do things. So school was quite difficult for me. Around 10, 11, 12, I created businesses where I would incorporate my friends. So I would have cookie baking business. I did a car wash, dog wash business. So we'd knock on the door and I'd train all my people to knock on the door and say, hi, I'm here to wash your car, your dog, or both.
Yeah.
Right? So there was no option. It was either your car, your dog, or you can wash both of them.
There wasn't a no in there.
There's no. And all we needed was a bucket, a sponge, a car wash, and a dog wash soap. So I figured the overhead was quite low. And then I would recruit all my friends to then do this business. I did face painting. I'd bake cakes. I mean, I was just always coming up with some random business and trying to incorporate all my friends in these businesses.
So you're getting into high school now. So in this period, was it you were doing this 12 to 16 period that you're doing all these little businesses, or were they still when you were younger, 8 to 12? Just trying to set a timeline for when.
This is 10 to 12. At 13, I homeschooled myself and did a lot of volunteer work for my church and things like that. I never went to high school.
Ah, okay. You completely skipped out. That's cool.
I never went to high school or college. I got a GED at 15 and I got emancipated so I could start working.
Wow. Do you want to talk me through that? Because I have no respect for the school system. Zero. And I know my wife hates this, and I say this on the show all the time, because I don't think it builds entrepreneurs. It builds great people to go and find a decent job. But then when you have a COVID-19 happen and then everyone gets furloughed, what if those people were taught to solve problems instead of taught to be able to get a good job at a company? And I think the recession will be smaller. We're in a mind economy now. People can work remotely. So what is your take on the whole schooling system and stuff?
So I agree. I mean, there's so many key things that they don't cover in school, and I don't want to get into, motherhood right now, but I just feel like they don't teach people about marketing, about branding, about sales, about finance, about scaling a business, about they're basically teaching people to be cogs in a machine instead of to build a machine, right? So now as I mentioned, struggled a lot with school. It was awful. Like my parents had dreams of me going to very prestigious colleges. My father actually comes from a Jewish background, and all of his family are really into I have cousins who've been to Harvard, Stanford, that have PhDs. Like school and education was very high on the priority list for these guys. And I just was like, no, I refuse. So I actually sneakily researched how to get a GED. And,
sorry, because I'm obviously from the UK side of things. GED, what's the GED?
So a GED it's basically the equivalent of a high school diploma. So I homeschooled myself until I was about 13 or 14. And then I studied for the test. I took the test and I got the equivalent of a high school diploma, even though I just turned 15. And then I was able to get a job, which I did at 15. So I started working at Universal City Walk. So it's a theme park, and there's this sort of big boardwalk. And I would sell magical colored pens that would change colors when you used a white marker. And what I loved about it is I was on commission. So I realized that if I made sort of a show, I could sell many of these at one point. And I was making $5 a pop. So in one presentation, I can make $30 or $40, right? So at 15, 16, I had a lot of cash in my life. Yeah. a lot more than a lot of grown-ups were making, which is part of my argument with my parents. Oh, I refused to go back to school because I was.
So you leaving, doing what you've done there, validated everything you've done. And do you think it created a different dynamic in the family? Because like you said, by your own admission, you didn't have the same money as the first time round, and your mum, you know, you got reacquainted with someone else. And obviously, do you think that was part of the driving force to make your own money as well?
Yeah, probably. I've been very independent from a very young age, and I wanted to buy a car. And so I would take all my cash, because I would get cash, not checks, and I would save it, and I would carry around in my purse, no joke, over $10,000 in cash, trying to get someone to buy me and to sell me a car. But since I didn't have any credit and I wasn't old enough to get credit, my mom had to co-sign for me, and I bought myself a little purple Honda Civic with purple backup lights, totally tripped out with a crazy sound system. And I earned that myself with my earnings from selling magical colored pens. So yeah, very independent, very, you know.
But then did you have to wait a couple of years till you were able to drive, or was it you bought it in a period where,
Sorry. So that must have been when I was about 17, because I got driving to about 17.
Yeah.
So, those years are a little blurry, but at 17, get this. So I decided that the magical colored pens were fun, but I wanted to get a real job. So I saw an advertisement for a sales manager position, right, at a very prestigious consulting firm. So I put on a suit. I'm 17, and I walk into the office, and I give my resume, which was very fluffed. And I said, "Hi, my name is Athena Severi, and I'm the best sales manager you will ever find," with so much confidence. And he laughed out loud. He's like, "You are not."
Where do you sign?
He's like, "You're not old enough to be a sales manager, but I love your spirit." And this man, his name is Craig Ferrara. He was the CEO of this consulting firm, and he actually hired me on the spot. He loved my spirit and personally trained me himself on he was very significant on business strategy, on marketing, on being able to train staff, on sales, on so much. So I actually grew up in this consulting firm, learning from these people who are managing, you know, major businesses. And that's really where I got a lot of my beginning education in business.
And is this more in corporate?
Yeah, this was completely corporate. I loved it. I think I was rebelling against the artist sort of like crunchiness of my parents. And I wanted to wear a suit, and I wanted to have a job, and I would go in every day, and I would kill the sales floor. And we worked with physical therapists and doctors. So this was a very professional firm. And I think the guy just took a liking to my confidence or something, because it made no sense that he hired me at all. I mean, I was sitting in the waiting room full of, you know, these professionals in their 30s, 40s, 50s, and somehow.
So how were you able to adapt? Because like what you said earlier, it's like, you don't like to be bossed around. I know that in you, Athena, today, like no one, when you're a boss, no one likes to be bossed, right? I'm the same. Everyone's the same once you run your own company. So back then, how did you make the adjustment for, you know, like school, it was too conformist, whereas in the corporation, they're more conformist as well. How were you able to navigate that so you wasn't, what's the word for it? I'm trying to find a word for it. So you wasn't held back, caged in. Does that make sense? You're free to do your thing.
Yeah, totally. I think for me, it's because if it's something I'm putting my mind to, if it's something I wanted to make money. I wanted to learn. I wanted to grow as a human being. And I was very competitive. I wanted to beat everyone on that floor every day. I wanted to show up before everyone. You know what I mean? Like, I wanted to get my boss coffee and a muffin, and just, I was like, this was my new world. I was very proud and happy to be in this space, because a lot of the kids I grew up with, they were still in school, right? Here I am, you know, being part of this thing. I actually got my first stage opportunities during that time. So yeah, so I enjoyed it. I really enjoyed that time.
That's good. And what about with being at the age that you were back then? You know, it's like people can be judgmental because, one, you're a woman, you're a strong woman in business. Obviously we've got the conference coming up. You know, what the difficulties that women can have in business yourself. And I see you speak to other women about this. How was the dynamic there where, you know, you're in corporate, you're very young, you're hitting these numbers? Isn't there like an element of like dealing with the corporate sharks, for a better word for it? Did you have problems there?
You know, it's funny. I think I'm just so appreciative of the people that happen to be at that company, because my immediate boss, his name was Bob, and he was one of the ones that really trained me. And like, I think I was everyone's little princess. So it wasn't the same. Like, I think
So the
later
way they see it with you is like, she's young, she's fiery, but we'll help her shape. Is that what you're saying? So they took you under the ring rather than you was a threat. Do you know what I mean?
I was a little girl, and they were so, like, anytime I would do something great, they would just be so happy and brag about how much so I mean, I was just so lucky. You know, there's certain people that really have a significant impact in your life. I think a lot of the people at that particular company at that time really helped me to kind of grow, and that was great. But there came a point where I kind of outgrew that world, and I was doing a lot of volunteer work and working with a lot of artists.
Right.
And
they're not easy to work with, as you know, especially once you return to structure. Hold that thought there. I'm just going to say some highs and stuff here as well. So, Saibi, yes, sir, lockdown legend. Then we've got Yelchin says, nice to be here again. Thank you both. Jamie says, love you, Athena. Facebook user says, China Magic was so amazing. We learned so much and met so many people and had so much fun. Channing's here says, thank you. Thankful for this boss page. She's amazing and inspiring. Michelle says, hey guys, love hearing Athena's story, yet more inspiration, showing what can be achieved with perseverance and passion.
Love.
And then Annetta, Athena, love hearing more about what makes you what you are today.
Oh, these girls are like my life. I'm already tearing up.
Jason says, great backstory, Athena. Thanks for sharing. Always interesting to hear the drive to survive and thrive. Then Tiffany says, good morning. Tiff joins every day. Much love to you, Tiff. Richard said, keep up the good work, Danny. You're on the roll through lockdown. We'll catch this one later because of the playback, because we get people from Australia. Go on.
There's another consulting firm I work with. That's where I met Kareem. He's like my brother, and I love you. He's not.
Okay. Yes.
He's joining us out of love. I love you, Kareem. Mwah.
Hello, Danny. Hello, Athena. Okay, so let's talk about this is a good segue into the other consulting firm then, yeah?
Well, that comes after the artist. So maybe.
Oh, let's do the artist thing first. Come on, yeah.
So I started working with a place called Celebrity Center, and our purpose was to help artists to achieve their goals in their world. And one thing I found with artists is that they were excellent at their craft, but really terrible with
business people. Terrible.
And you've been in the music industry, you know exactly what I'm talking about.
I know exactly what you're talking about. Yeah.
And some of them would think that just because they're super talented, they somehow deserve to now be very successful, right?
It's called entitlement. Yeah,
and exactly. And so what was interesting is I grew up in the artist world with my father and my mother, right? And then I had this business background already. I'm 19 now. And so I decided to work at this company that completely changed everything for me, because I felt a lot more purpose in this. I felt artists inject life. They inspire people. If you get someone who has a really good purpose and they have an audience, I mean, at the time there weren't influencers, there wasn't social media. It wasn't like just anybody could go on and start communicating to the world. If you were an artist, you had an audience. And so those people were very key in developing the culture. So I felt like this was so much bigger than anything I'd ever been a part of. And that was a very significant time for me. That's where I learned to put on events, actually.
Okay, so let's unravel this a little bit more. So when you were doing the events and dealing with the artists, give the audience an understand what it is like to manage or look after artists, musicians and stuff. Just tell them. Just tell the audience what it's like.
They're complicated, to say the least. You know what I mean?
This is why I probably have a lot of patience. I know I blow up from time to time, but my patience is pretty good because I've had to deal with a load of retrobates from the music industry. And it teaches you a lot about people, the psychology of people, how people react, you know, managing fragile egos and all sorts of things. It builds good stead, you know, it puts you into a good place. So tell us about the sticking to around that period. Just stick to the timeline. What are we now? We 20, 21?
19 to 24.
Okay, let's cover 19 to 24.
Yeah.
So you're still in the corporate job, or you moved on to artist management? Were you doing this on the side? Was it a night thing?
So I had a boyfriend from 17 to 19 that completely broke my heart around 19. And I kind of just wanted to take a step back from everything that I was doing in my life. And that's around the time that I was hanging out a lot with these artists and going to the center. And so it was just sort of another sort of transition time for me. So I started working at this center, and that went on for some years. But this is where I developed a lot of very interesting skills, how to properly host someone, because I was dealing with people who are dignitaries. I mean, people who like the cream of the crop. And then I also was working with brand new people. I had to learn how to help people with their own blocks and barriers and lack of confidence, because some of these people, you wouldn't believe, some of them are very famous artists and they have no real confidence in themselves. You know what I mean? They would. So I think I learned a lot about really understanding people. And one thing, this is interesting, and you'll see how this shows up with China Magic, Titan, everything else in my life. So I figured out a formula where the newer artists who needed help, they would go to these, colleges, they would do these sort of seminars and things, but no one was doing seminars at the time with working artists. So I figured out this formula where if you have a casting director or an artist or a musician who's actually successful now, and you get them in front of an audience of people that are trying to do the exact same thing, that's where the magic would happen. And I figured this formula out very early. So one of the main things I would do is I would bring in these A-list celebrity artists to have sort of these intimate talks with other artists, and it would blow them.
You're on the up, yeah.
Yeah, and that was so important because a lot of the coaches and waving around a pencil. A lot of the coaches and a lot of the classes these guys would go to were washed up artists who were looking to make $15 an hour to be coaches and such. And that's not who you learn from. That's not who you want to learn from. So that's where I found out that formula, actually.
Cool. And so just for clarity, you moved out of corporate, you've gone into this. This is a full-time business that you owned, or was it a company you worked for?
It was actually a nonprofit organization.
Gotcha.
It helped artists, and I did that for 5 years. I met my husband there, actually. We got married when I was 22. And so it was just my passion. I would be there from 8 in the morning till 1 or 2 a.m., throwing concerts, fashion shows, seminars, going to parties, meeting incredible people, inspiring people. Like this was a really fun and amazing point in my life, for sure.
So where did you go from there? Obviously, you met Wentz, and how old was you when you had the first of your 2 children, isn't it?
Yeah, so I was 24 when he was born. So I had to leave the artist world because, you couldn't have a baby and work those hours and that kind of thing. So that's actually when I quit working with artists to become a mother. Yeah.
And then where was from there, obviously raising a young family, being ambitious as you are, what did you do next? Did you take some time out for motherhood, or was you running, knowing there was some sort of business running along the side somewhere? Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, we were working for a nonprofit, Danny.
Yeah.
My husband had been working there for years, and so had I. So it wasn't like we had this big bankroll. So I'm pregnant now. And so I decided to go back to corporate America. And that's where I was working for the second consulting firm where that gentleman just jumped on. So the second one was in the automotive industry. And so I let them know, I said, look, I'm 4 months pregnant. You have me for 5 months. This is my background. And at this point, I mean, the amount of things that I had done, the adventures of travel, the world that I'd created in those years, they're like, yes, we'll take you, even if it's for the next 4 months. So I immediately started working there. And then I was working till the day before Aries was born, literally the day before he was born. Yeah.
And did you work, and you were in the office, or you started to take some time to work home? Yeah.
Nope. I never took a day off. I would get there at 7 in the morning. I would work till 4 or 5 every day. I never took any time. Sometimes I might take a walk or that kind of thing. I had a couple times where maybe I'd take a day off, but I was literally in the office the day before my son I went into labor with my son.
Wow. And then where did you go from there? Because you said you've only got me for 5 months. You were 4 months pregnant. You've got 5. Did you go back to the firm after because they were impressed with your work? What happened at that firm whilst being pregnant and going through,
So they basically set me up to work from home. And the idea was that I would work from home for, maybe 2-3 months while the baby was really, really small. But when he was born, the idea of turning him over to someone else was like over my dead body. Like, I'm sorry, but there's just no human that would separate me from that tiny little boy. So the next time was difficult because I was working with corporate, clients live on the phone, and I had a baby on my lap. And so I would actually bring him into the office with me. They gave me a corner office, which became my nursery / my office. So yeah, I never skipped a beat. I was with my baby and making.
Did you feel valued, or because you were obviously good at what you've done? You were good at sales. Sales drives the business. It pays for everyone else, the wages, the profits, the shareholders, everything else. Did you feel valued in the company because, like you've got a young family to give you the corner office and stuff? So were you doing tremendous work there, or did you actually work at a really good supportive company?
I think
and there's a difference. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. I think it was both. I mean, I would do sales, but also one of the things I created was a network. We called them hosts, helping others succeed today. So it was basically taking our clients and having them represent what we did and go out. I would turn them into speakers. And I would empower our clients to become leaders. And so not only had I sort of mastered this sales world, but I also created an entire sort of army of these amazing people that had the purpose to help others in their industry. So yeah, so of course they didn't want to lose me. And I also developed online webinars when that was very new. I think GoToWebinar cost $10,000 a year because it was very exclusive. And so, yeah, I did a lot of cool things, but I mean, I had a baby that I was nursing and changing his diaper, and it killed me. I mean, it definitely killed me that I couldn't just go to the park with him and just be with him, but I just was trying to do the best I could, and I refused to give up my son. And I didn't really have an option to quit work. So yeah.
But you managed in some cases you managed to find a medium that was the best of both worlds. It allowed you to carry on doing what you wanted to do. You were happy with motherhood, but it gave you the best of both worlds to have your son with you and obviously be able to perform at the highest level in your work as well. So where did it go from here then? So you've created the hosts, you had the corner office, the little one started to grow. Where did it start to evolve from here?
So I ended up my son got older and he couldn't stay in the office anymore because he got loud and mobile. And so I had to go back working from home. I got pregnant with my second son. And so I put my little boy in preschool too early. I mean, I would just cry every time I'd have to bring him to school. But then I got pregnant with my second boy. And during that time is when I created Ladies with Babies, actually. So I was home, I was working full time, and then I was lonely. And so I developed a group on Facebook where I brought other moms together. It was only moms, friends of friends. And so I started to flex my wings on event creation, and I would do picnics, 1950s themed picnics where everyone was dressed in the 50s, and we get these amazing cars. And then I put on a full convention, actually 3 of them, that was sponsored by Whole Foods, Baby Gap, all kinds of boutiques. I brought the firemen on a fire truck. I brought Santa Claus. I had a boutique thing. I had a fair. I just had to do more than just working and having 2 kids. So yeah, so that's my second baby was born. I was still working from home. I was doing conventions. I was leading these women. But I was struggling, Danny. I was struggling because.
Talk me through some of the emotions there. Was there problems with the work? Did you feel guilt because you're trying to do everything? What was that?
Yeah. So, I mean, one obstacle that I had, and a lot of people know this about me, how I don't sleep. I think around this time is when I just screwed my body up tremendously because I had a nocturnal newborn who would stay up all night. And then I had a small, toddler who was, normal and would wake up during the day. So I had them 24 hours basically. And then I had to be on my computer at 7 a.m. for my boss to see that I was available, right? So trying to juggle this, and then also I would volunteer for my church, and I had Ladies with Babies and everything, and being a wife, and I would cook dinner every night. I don't even know how any of this was possible, but I was exhausted. And there was a key moment where I really broke down. I've only spoken about this one other time with you, where is it okay if I tell you that story with my son in the balcony? Okay. So at this point, my youngest is maybe about a year and a half or two. I'm on the phone with a major client who I'm closing this big consulting package with, right? And my little boy wakes up and he starts crying. So I can hear him crying and I'm like, oh my gosh. So I run up the stairs and I go on my balcony and I shut my glass door. And I could see my 2-year-old like sobbing, waiting, like trying to get to mommy. And meanwhile, I'm like closing the deal, writing the credit card down on this box. And it was just really rough to see how I was failing. I just felt like I was failing. I felt guilty. I felt like I wasn't being the mom I wanted to be. I wasn't being, in corporate the way I wanted to be. And so, yeah, it was this is a thing that drives me, Danny.
So that moment there is a pivotal moment in your life, because you've effectively, and I mean this in a nice way, is that for that moment you gave up. In that very moment is like you closed the deal and closed the door on your son, and that kind of tortured you in a way. It's like, this is not going to happen again.
Yeah, something had to give. So I brought my baby to preschool, and I'm not even kidding. Every time I created a preschool, by the way. Yeah. I couldn't find a preschool that I liked enough.
So you built your own one. Why not?
So I literally built a preschool called Little Acorns Grow with a partner. And so I created an entire preschool at that moment to put my son in, because I wanted the best and I couldn't find one. But every time I'd take him to school, it would kill me because he wasn't old enough in my world. I wasn't ready to give him up, but I just couldn't do it all. So that, I think, was very significant for me. And I think a lot of moms will relate to that, just trying to balance everything and feeling guilty. And so it was definitely rough.
So when that happened, obviously that becomes a pivotal point, but it helps create change for stuff, doesn't it? You go through these things and that's what forces your hand to do the other thing. So how did that moment there with your son, closing the deal, closing the door, if you like, where you don't have to make that compromise anymore? What got you into like being an entrepreneur? How did you get out of corporate from there? What was your pivot?
Okay. So I remember my friends Ari and Chelsea, who are still in the Amazon space. Ari was working at the same consulting firm as me, and he had taken the Amazing Selling Machine course, right? And so he actually mentioned to me, and this must have been maybe about 6 to 8 months after I had put my babies both in school and in the office. And he was quitting his job and he was selling kitchen products on Amazon. And I remember laughing out loud and being like, you're doing what? Like, you're quitting your stable job to sell these kitchen products. And so one thing that Ari did, which I thought was really kind of him, is he took me to lunch and he actually opened up the Seller Central account and he showed me the numbers and he showed me what it took to build his business up to that point. So I did not go into the Amazon space blindly. I knew it was going to take work. I knew that it was going to take, an investment, which to this day, I still try to impart on people and not pretend it's some get rich quick thing, because it's really not. It is a real business. And I appreciate Ari for doing that with me. But the fact that he could quit and he could do something from home, I was all in. I was like, where do I sign up? Give that to me. So that was really where I found Amazon.
Don't worry about the dog. It's fine. We're live.
Sorry.
It's fine. Okay. Let him settle down. So Ari took you through. It took you through Seller Central. You got the idea, and was that the birth of you? Did you go on an ASM course or anything like that?
I signed up for the Amazing Selling Machine course. That's actually what I took, and I did it very part time because I had ladies and babies, my job, my kids, so it wasn't something that I had dove into. But what was funny is, because I'm not good at following directions, I didn't actually do the criteria properly. And I decided I wanted to do, because there was a product that was selling really well, which was this fleece headband that had like a little hole in the back for your ponytail, right? And so that was one of the hot selling items. And I knew, since I had a woman audience, that I should pick a product that women would appreciate. And so I decided to design my own headband. And that was my first product, which I did quite well with. I'll admit it, I wasn't the best at putting my listing together. I didn't really understand the keywords like I should have. But one thing I really understood was people, and I had a community. And so I launched my product in my mommy group, right? And because these women had seen how hard I'd worked for them, all of those conventions, they were all not for profit. I'd worked for months and months and months. We put on seminars, we would do toy drives, we would donate money to single moms in need. Like, they'd just seen how much I cared and so much help, and I never asked anything of them. So when I posted in there, hey guys, I just started my own business. This is this headband. Would you guys mind, getting it for me? Which I know is not legal and that's completely against TOS, but I did that. Sorry. I know even that's like.
Jeff's not watching. He's fine. He's busy. Yeah.
Who's not watching?
Jeff, not watching. Yeah.
So anyway, I posted in there, and because these women were just so lovely, the amount of juice that was sent to my listing and the reviews I was getting, I mean, my product went really, really well. And I actually was able to quit my job off of that one first product.
So yeah, what's this 2014, 15 period, is it?
Yeah, when things were a little easier.
Yeah. So because I want to make sure that we've cleared the path, is that was your jump from corporate, was the Amazon thing. You discovered Amazon when you wanted to diversify and get out of the corporate world. Is that right?
Yeah. And it was really scary because I'd only really I think I launched my first headband and then I launched a second headband. And I think it was just those two headbands. And it wasn't like I was making enough money to really, kind of leave my job. But at that point, I had just had enough. I'd had enough of, I wasn't being myself. I wasn't truly helping others. I wasn't with my children. You know what I mean? Like it was a dead end. I wasn't building a legacy. I was not really like, there was nothing good about my world at that moment. And so I saw Amazon for me. And this, I think, is really significant for me, Danny, is it gave me my freedom. It gave me my freedom to break away from this corporate crap that I was dealing with. Yeah.
And so obviously to move this timeline forward, you'd launched by this point your second product. Now, I know you're involved with the guys over ASM and stuff, aren't you? You've done, so where did the timeline go from being just a seller to start moving into the space and doing, we'll get to China Magic, etc.
Sure.
But where is the rest of the narration here? So you launched your first two products. Where do we go from here?
Here's what happened. These girls see me launch headbands. Now they see me quit my job because I made a post, which I actually found the other day, and I have a screenshot of it, where it was a Monday. I'm at the zoo with my 2-year-old. And I was like, instead of, having to turn him over to a sitter, I'm at the zoo. I was able to make pancakes for my other son and take him to school. Entrepreneurship is the best thing that ever happened to me, right? So I posted that and I got a tremendous amount of people asking me like, how are you doing this? How did you quit your job? So I did not know. Oh, so I went to the Amazing Selling Machine 4 event, the one that Richard Branson spoke at. And I was completely like, oh my gosh, this event and the entrepreneurs and the people. And I met so many amazing people. I actually met Mike McClary at Starbucks, who's one of the main guys of Amazing, before he'd ever gotten involved. He was actually just an attendee. I met him at Starbucks. We connected. Like I just started meeting all these incredible people. And I remember being at this convention thinking, these are my people. They're crazy. They're, they're not the status quo. They're wild. They just do, like, I felt more at home with the people I was meeting at that conference than I had with anyone I'd ever met in corporate America, even the artists. Like I finally found my tribe, which was so amazing. So anyway, I didn't even know there was such a thing as affiliate commission with Amazing. So I wrote into support and I said, hey, is there any way for me to get other people signed up for this course? And so because I'd had all these women asking me, I posted my affiliate link into my Ladies with Babies group.
Yep.
I became one of the top 10 affiliates for Amazing Selling Machine from that one post.
Wow.
Yeah.
And they've got a lot of affiliates as well, haven't they? So
that's massive. Those are some big numbers. So here I am, Danny. I just signed up a ton of women. I made more money in that one post than I had in, I can't tell you how long, but being the person I am, I felt incredibly responsible for these women, right? Now, I'd only launched 2 products. I was in no way an Amazon expert, right? So I felt that these women needed support. They needed mentorship, right? Something I was always lacking and something that would inspire Titan and China Magic later on. When I was selling, I had questions. I needed help. I was making decisions. For example, I launched my first 2 products and then I got really, really cocky and I decided I was going to do a full yoga attire line. So I spent $25,000 on these leggings that didn't have any, like it just was so completely off. Like it was really wrong. So yeah. So anyway, point is bringing it back to these girls. I knew that I needed to find people who were really successful to help lead these women into success, because the last thing I wanted to do is have them pay money for these courses and then fail. Right. So I started putting on little get-togethers at my home, then at restaurants, and then the husbands started coming, and then they grew and grew until we had standing room only in like these little restaurant areas. And then I put on a cruise in the Caribbean for 70 people for no money. Like I made nothing off of any of this, but I just.
But you were building the Athena brand there. You're building goodwill. You're building on. It's the first steps. It's the pay it forward stage, isn't it, of your career, of what you're building within the community.
Yeah, except the thing about my journey, which people may or may not know, is that I did not have a plan for any of this. It was really more like, okay, now I want to do a cruise.
Yeah,
right?
You're just working on a vibe.
So I'm on the cruise and I'm like, this is amazing. And one thing that kept happening is people would come to me and say, hey, I've spent $25,000 for a mastermind. The content and the vibe that you did in this last week here in the Caribbean far surpasses the quality of anything I'd ever been to. I was getting a lot of feedback because what I did is I actually met Angie Chacon, by the way, Michael Esty, and a few other brilliant people at the Amazing Selling Machine event. And those were the ones that I asked if they could please speak at my conference because they were successful sellers. No one knew who they were. They were not gurus.
Well,
right?
Angie went on to do 8 figures, didn't she? And now she's got her own factory. She doesn't order from the factory.
Yeah.
She's the boss. She owns it.
Yeah. So Angie Chacon is a complete boss, became one of my closest friends. I actually put together a dinner at the Amazing Selling Machine just for fun, just to network. And she happened to be one of the people. And I asked everyone, I said, anyone who's successful, can you stand up and give everyone some tips? She stood up, Michael Esty stood up, a guy named Brad Kugler stood up. So these guys were the ones that stood up. They had enough guts to help the room and to talk in front of the room. So I said, okay, good. Those are my speakers. So I pulled them all in and I brought them on to a beautiful cruise ship in the Caribbean. And that's where I really broke my teeth on putting on an event with content, with speakers, and picking people that were there only to give back. Like none of us were there to make money. So I think the vibe was just very special. And I met some of my closest friends all on that cruise. That was a very significant moment.
So where did we go after the cruise? What did you develop after that?
So at this point, I went to a conference and I was pitched to go to China. And I had never been to China. One of the things that I was struggling, as I mentioned, I had 2 products that were doing decently. And then I had a huge fiasco with my attire that I should have never gotten into. It was
the leggings.
The leggings and the little, I went way over my head. I thought I was Lululemon all of a sudden, which I thought.
Yeah.
And I actually think it kind of tore me to pieces as a seller that whole time period when I was kind of over my head. But anyway, so I was at this conference and somebody pitched the idea of going to China. And it just seemed so smart because I was struggling with adding more products to my brand, right? I wanted to get better pricing. I also, because my fabrics and colors and sizes were all a thing in the headband space, every time I would develop a new headband or a new color, there would just be so much back and forth. There'd be, weeks of me having to develop each thing. And I thought, if I'm in person and I can see the fabrics, I can make the designs, I can change things. I also wanted to see what other brands I could develop. So I was very excited to go to China as a seller. But I was very disappointed in the trip that I had signed up for.
Yeah. So so obviously this is you're learning from this. You wasn't happy with this trip. So where CM was born.
Yeah. So part of the thing that I was hoping for is that they sold me, it was 3 days. It was, $5,000 for 3 days to go to Yiwu. And I was expecting from their presentation.
You paid $5,000 to go to a flea market, basically.
I paid $5,000 to go to a flea market. But here's what happened.
Yeah.
They didn't set up a Facebook group with the people. So I set it up, right? They didn't prep us with what to pack. They didn't tell us anything except for where to arrive. I went to the wrong airport. I got on a train. I almost got lost. Like, it was awful because there's really no guidance. So I'm by myself, a female in China, completely lost with no real guide of how to get anywhere. And then one of the things that I really didn't like about this was the mentorship. First of all they did was 3 1-hour presentations. And their idea of dealing with China was to present yourself as the biggest, baddest, possible person, go in those booths and talk down the price, like in a very Western aggressive manner. And they literally had videos of this guy who happened to be like, I think 6'5", and it was just this tiny little Asian woman talking about the price, being like a big dog with throwing his ego around. And I was watching this and I'm like, I'm not an expert in China.
That sounds like an arsehole to me. That's not how you talk to people.
Yeah, I'm like, I'm not an expert in China, but I do understand something about humans.
I've seen that at Canton Fair. I've seen guys aggressively speaking disrespectfully, and I'm just like, how do you actually get anywhere? It doesn't cost nothing to be nice to people. It's free.
Exactly. So what I ended up doing is I took one of the guys and I said, we're going to go and we're going to have a contest. You're going to use your method and I'm going to use my method. And my method was just to go in the booth, get to know the person, compliment their products, talk about their baby that's in the photo, just be a freaking human being. And then plan the future and the ideas and that kind of thing, and then connect in a way that we would then talk about price, right? So I just did all this instinctively. And I was getting better pricing than this guy that was going in there throwing his weight around and being an a-hole, basically. So
you can swear, Athena. So I know you're a princess, but you can swear on here.
No, I actually
there's no filter.
I know how to filter when I need to. So here I am in China, and the other things that I noticed was there was no networking. People were getting very disheartened. They sent us in with these little translators that were high school students that barely spoke English, right? And they didn't know anything about negotiating. So it was pretty screwed. And what I ended up doing was creating the networking. I brought groups of people into the fair with me. Guys, we can do this. Look, I found these products. It was amazing. Let's, and I found products. Like, I just went through and even though it was a bunch of crap, I found a few booths, and man, I got probably a list of 40 products that I could do because I was not going home without it. And what I ended up doing was giving some of those product ideas to some of the other attendees that were having a rough time, right? This is just who I am. This is how I naturally am. And so I went to the organizer of the event and I said, look, your trip could be much better, much, much better, right? And I would love to join forces. I have a bit of an audience at this point. Can we connect and do a trip together? And they're like, Athena, we love you, but we're fine with the way the trip is. And I was like, okay, cool. So that's where China Magic became China Magic.
Well, and you're on number 7 now. I know, obviously, forget COVID for now, but let's take it back to China Magic 1. Tell me about because like when you do China Magic, you go big, hotels, everything, no expense spared, food. So what was China Magic 1 compared to like the last one that we did together when I come out? Was it 6 in October?
Yeah. Just to touch upon someone, sorry, I forgot to mention this. There's a guy named Pablo Della. He's a large seller, and he's like a cousin to me. And before I set off to do China Magic, I actually took him to brunch, and I had my laptop because I wanted him to look at my listings, right? And this is a moment that shifted me from being a seller to who I am in a lot of ways, because I opened my laptop to show him my seller account, and he looks at me and goes, why, here, I'm going to curse, why the fuck are you doing Amazon? And I was like, what do you mean? I mean, this guy's doing millions of dollars on Amazon. He's like, your skills and that thing that you have with people, that is you, and it's not normal. And you need to stop doing Amazon, and you need to focus. You would always say, focus, Athena, focus. So I told him my idea about China Magic, and he was one of the first mentors that came along with me on the trip. And so I also brought in a guy named Marty Sherman, who's been going to Canton for over 20 years, right? Because I knew I wasn't going to go in. I wasn't a China expert. I needed big sellers. I needed China experts. That was sort of the crux of how I was going to do it. So I'd never been to the Canton Fair, Danny, when I brought 50 people. I had no real email list. I had no sales page. I had a PayPal. I had a Facebook event. And that was it. And so I personally contacted every single person. I didn't charge very much. I let partners come for free, spouses come for free. And we went for 12 days to Canton. And what was very funny is the first, I thought we were only going to need to mastermind for about 3 or 4 days. But it turned out that they wanted to mastermind every single day. So because I wasn't prepared, one day I actually broke into a conference room, and everyone was sitting on the floor in this conference room that I literally pirated into because we had no place to mastermind. And then I spent a fortune on another place. So it was really like we winged the entire thing. I winged the entire thing. I knew that if I had big sellers, good people, experts on China, we were going to be okay. But China Magic won. The people connected, they got products. I mean, Marty did such an amazing job instilling the culture of China, really projecting to us how to get terms like, so China Magic 1 it was pure magic. It was a bit crazy, but I think we need to move to China Magic 2 because that's where Dan comes in.
Yeah. Let's move over to China. Oh, I'd like to also say just before, because people sometimes ask me, what does Athena do? And I always make it clear to people, don't get confused here. It's like, you're not, I don't know if you are selling now, but your skills is not being a seller. Your skills is putting people together of influence and getting the best out of people. That's what you do. You're a curator. You use the word a collector of people. And I think that's what people sometimes forget. And I have to explain that concept to some people, because I think we're in a space where everyone goes, oh yeah, well, they the 7-figure seller, or, it's always been around, 7-figure or 8-figure, but they don't always understand is like what you can do is you can put that array of people together. Look at Kian, who comes on the show. Look at Dan. Look at the other speakers that you have at the event. Like, there's a long line of people where you will identify who these people are and then put them together. And that's your magic.
Thank you, darling.
Let's go to number 2.
Sure. And before I get to number 2, I think with this story and this background, it might make people understand. So I appreciate you taking the time to do this interview with me, because I do have the consulting background. I do have, how to kind of help people. And so it's not just the collecting, but I'm actually thinking with the whole picture, and the fact that I myself am still a seller. I'm not a big seller, but I do understand the Amazon game, which I think is also very key, because I think it helps me to kind of be more intuitive with what people need. So, so now I'm going to conferences and being asked to speak on stage. I actually go to Barcelona and I host my first networking event in Barcelona, and I meet some really special people in Europe. And I've become more of a thing in that space. I met a guy named Phil Williams, who's a seller that just exited, had a really lovely exit. I'm sure you'd love to have him on the show, Danny. He's wonderful. And so through him, I actually met Dan. I saw this guy in San Diego, and he said, hey, I'm going to go have, some dinner with some people. Why don't you come visit? And that's where I met Alicia Shapiro, and that's where I met Dan Ashburn. And the reason why I bring up Dan at this point is because we were chatting. I was telling him about China Magic, and I invited him to come along to China Magic 2. So I'm going to tell you something I probably shouldn't be saying on air, but we're just being very raw here. China Magic 2 was very interesting. We had some of the people who were being the mentors. Let's just say, I can't really say this, Danny. Never mind. I'm not going to go into that part of the story.
Don't go there. Yeah, it's fine. Don't tease the audience, but don't go there. Let's just say there is a point that becomes uncomfortable, and it wasn't under your vision. Should we say that?
Yeah. So I realized who I wanted to be connected with and who I wanted to find. And one thing that's very important, and it's very difficult to find in this space even, is someone who's very successful, very brilliant, does not have ego, does not try to throw their alpha-ness around, right? And is genuinely there to help others. It's like finding a magical unicorn, right? Kian is an excellent example of this. He's brilliant, he's strong, but he's not going to throw, he's very kind and very loving of human beings. So I met him on China Magic 2, actually. And Dan is another one who's very much that way. And in China Magic 2 is when he said, Athena, I can see your vision. I see what you're doing here, and I'd love to help you to accomplish more. So that's where Dan and I
Dan's a master of operations, isn't it? As well as being a successful entrepreneur, he's a master of processes, operations, and marketing.
So what Dan did for China Magic and for my life and everything is I'm not the systems person, right? Like I did not have any of the structure that Dan put into my business, my life, my everything. So he's really sort of the yin to the yang of everything I do. And when we connected, something magical happened when we did China Magic 3. The quality of the people that came on China Magic 3, the speakers, the content, it literally blew anything anyone had ever done ever. Like it was wild what happened on China Magic 3 specifically. And that's when we went to the Wall of China. I've always wined and dined, by the way. China has always been 4 seasons, red carpet, the food, the pirate ship, the surprises, the dragon that comes in when no one expected with fire. I mean, like, that's just me. That's very Athena. So, and people love it because what I'm trying to do with China is I'm also trying to take somebody out of their day-to-day, Danny, and I'm trying to put them into a magical space where they're being inspired, they're connecting with other entrepreneurs, and they're no longer stuck in their day-to-day, in their head. They're able to kind of think bigger. So I actually create a whole different world with them, which I think is part of how they succeed so well when we're in China, is because they don't have the negativity of the people around them trying to bring them down anymore. So that's part of it as well. Mm-hmm.
So we get to number 3. So where else do we go from here? Because obviously China was happening, and it will do once COVID's done. It was happening twice yearly, right? So April and October.
Yeah.
So last trip was last October. That was China 6, was it?
Where you came, yeah.
Yeah. So let's go prior to that. Let's complete the story in between there, because obviously there's the Titan network. There's other things, set of events. We want to weave these into the timeline of the story. Okay. So let's pick up from part like China Magic 3 and then carry on.
Sure. So meanwhile, I'm traveling a lot. I go to a lot of conferences. I put on a lot of events in between. You and I do our holiday events together in London, in LA. I open Prosper. I speak at every amazing event. I'm the main speaker in Amsterdam. Like basically, I start to speak a lot on the subject of networking, connection, the power. And I think that's a huge part of what I do is when you get a room of people, like here's a great example. You put Kian in the room with a guy like Moshe, who's doing $50 million a year, right? Kian's developing a brand. Moshe is amazing at systems and all kinds of things, and Kian's great at sourcing. So you put these two brains together, and all of a sudden, all this back and forth and this magical stuff happens. So I really believe in the power of networking, and that's where I really get into that and start speaking on podcasts. And so a lot of things are happening. I'm kind of expanding quite a bit. Dan and I are not officially working together. He just kind of helps me with China. And, so I think that's kind of what's going on around that time. And then China Magic 5 is when Dan basically made the decision to just come work with me full time, right? And one of the things that happens in China is people get mentored every day for 12 days. They get content, they get access to these incredible sellers, and they fast forward their business, let's say, a year, 2, 3 years sometimes, just because of the negotiation, the products that they find. So all of this amazing stuff's happening while in China. But the problem was, how do we continue that? Because China Magic would end, and then I would get asked all the time, Athena, who do you know that can do blah? Hey, Athena, how do I contact Justin Dyson about his Walmart presentation? So I was always being asked, like, how do I get more mentoring? What events are you doing? How do I get a discount? Can you still get me a ticket to this thing? Like just on and on and on. And so during China Magic 5, I sat down with Dan and we actually stayed up all night one night. And we put together about 3 pages handwritten of all the things that we felt would benefit people and create a network. And that's where Titan was born.
Yep. So, okay, so let's move into Titan. You're up to about, 100 plus members now, is that right?
250.
250 members.
Yeah.
I remember on a plane, you were mooting the idea of Titan when we were speaking on the way to Prague. You're telling me about this new idea and you showed me the logo. That was 18 months ago. Mm-hmm. So you now got a network of 250 members.
Yeah, we had our Titan anniversary 2 days ago.
So in a year?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's nearly a member, not a member a day, but a member every day and a half or so.
Yeah.
It's pretty good going. So where is the road next? Obviously with COVID-19 and stuff, where are you seeing China Magic going next year when this kind of, because it has to clear, right? We're going to be bullish about this. Yeah. Where do you see it all going?
I mean, China Magic is fabulous. We have it very dialed in, you know what I mean? So I think for me, Titan's more my main focus. We brought the main mentors from China Magic. We actually went to Thailand after China Magic. And when we were in Thailand is when we like really kind of formed this bond with all the guys. So the people that I work with in Titan, they really are like my family. And they're all just very successful people, but I feel like we've really created a movement. So for the first time in my life, I feel like I've combined everything that I have ever wanted, which is something that has purpose, where I can create a movement, a community. It lasts all year long. Because of COVID, we've, really been able to help people virtually. Yep. So that's been really cool. But I finally feel like I found what I was put on this earth to do with Titan. So it's been a really special experience.
And I suppose with Titan, whereas when you do trips, it's like if you rely on live events, with COVID-19, you need to diversify. You need to, and I suppose Titans give you that opportunity, because if you won't be able to put on China Magic as successful as it is twice a year, it's nice to have something like that's Titan, because it's steady flow. It's an everyday thing. It's not just like something that happens twice a year, so it can, and a lot of this can be done online as well, can't it?
Yeah, we've had you on as a, doing a masterclass. So we've got all these ambassadors. So what I did is I took my full network of all these incredible people. And so all of our ambassadors, they do content for us. We've got an SOP library, like we've just really developed it out. But I think one of the things that has happened that I'm so proud of is just the people that we've connected with, because some of the ladies that were commenting. Oh, by the way, we have called Ladies of Titan as well, and a lot of us are going to be unbranded by women. So we're very proud. And one of the things I've also done, I think, is I can see talent, Danny. I'm very good at reading people, and I'm really good at seeing people who are very special and able to help people. And I've been able to kind of inspire people to be leaders, to be mentors. And like, I've had them tell me, like, you've made me brave, Athena. You've made me realize that I'm here to help others and to give back. So I think having a platform like Titan, where I can kind of take people within our industry and graduate them up to becoming, leaders to help others, I think that is probably one of the things I'm most proud of that I've done so far. Yeah.
So what does the future hold for you? What's your plan for the next couple of years? Where do you want to go with this?
I think Titan gives me the framework to continue to play. I really love the female space. I love what you're doing, Danny, and it's such an honor for me to be a part of that. We didn't talk a lot about motherhood. I also really love inspiring parents to be able to help and nurture their children to find who they are. My kids are now 9 and 12, and they've been around the world with me at conferences. And 12 is a very interesting age. You're a father, there's a lot changing and there's a lot going on.
I've got a 14-year-old yet.
Yeah, exactly. And so seeing how I have inspired my sons and how they have been around people like Kian and Dan and all these guys to see, how they can build things. Like, they don't think like sheep, they think like lions, And so I think for me, I definitely want to help people find their freedom. And I forgot to mention this, like, Amazon has been a platform that allowed me to find out who I am, because it gave me enough finance that I could quit the job And then through this sort of journey that kind of naturally happened, I found out who I am and what my abilities are. I want that for others as well. So for me, like when I help people with Amazon, it's great for them to be able to build a business and to make money. But that energy to me is fueling whatever it is that's important to them. So if that means that they want to be able to be a good parent, they want to be able to give back, they want to be able to travel. Like if you take away this thing I like to call #jail, which is that, 9 to 5 trap that a lot of people run into, and people can actually build something they believe in, that I feel like they can really just find that freedom. And I think anything I can do on that path is really what I want to focus, my time to accomplish.
Legacy or money?
Legacy, 100%.
How would you like to be remembered?
That one makes me tear up. I don't know why. I just want to be someone who's inspired. Oh my God, I don't know why I'm crying. I want to be someone remembered who inspired people to achieve them, to achieve what they're meant to achieve, and to bring out whoever they are, their abilities. And I think to create those memories and those connections that will be significant. So I don't know how to describe that, but definitely
I think you've done a good job of it.
A piece of that, whatever that is.
That was your in depth. How'd you feel?
Oh gosh, I don't know, Danny. How did I do?
You done well.
I love you, Danny. Thank you for doing this. Thank you for who you are.
Danny, you always make me cry. Make them cry. Sorry, Kata. We've got Kata on tomorrow. Florence says, well, loved every second of this. Jason said, this has been an amazing call, Danny. Athena is a Wonder Woman. Ian Pat says, enjoying this lots. Great story. Athena. Let's scroll up here. Tiff says, I've learned a lot from this too. I think was referring to a message earlier on. She said you should curse more.
I do in real life, Tiffany, don't worry. Yeah.
Michelle says, great show. Love you, Athena.
She's been such an inspiration. Oh my gosh, you're achieving your purpose, Athena. I love you, Kareem. Tiffany has inspired me to be brave and climb more trees. Yes, girl. Yeah, I think that's, Danny, that's so key. That is so key. It's like, if you believe it can happen, I think first people need to find where their goals are, who they are. And that's what we're going to talk about in Branded by Women. We're going to talk about mindset, and we're going to talk about like really pinpointing where you want to go with your life, who you are, what your purpose is, and then going for that, because life is short. And if you just spend it, grinding away, not accomplishing things, not helping people, not inspiring, then what's the freaking point? You know what I mean? So we need to, I think, just double down on our goals, on helping others, and in believing in ourselves. And if you ever feel like you can't, it's really important. I forgot to talk about this, and I'll just mention this super briefly, but surround yourself with people who believe in you, who have a greater purpose in themselves, who are achieving big things. I would not be anywhere if it wasn't for the amazing human beings in my life, like Channing, Justin, Wyden, Alicia, Kata, Georgie, I can't name them all, Dan, like all these guys. Like if it wasn't for Andrew and all these people, like I wouldn't be nowhere. And people like you, Danny, are such a great example of that. So keep inspiring us, Danny.
You're welcome. You're welcome. But today's is about you. So you can get to see Athena. She'll be at Branded by Women. You can grab a ticket below there, brandedbywomen.com, absolutely free. Athena will be there on the kickoff party alongside Michelle Venton and Isabella Hamilton.
You brought in like 30 goddesses, Danny. It's quite.
I brought in the lions. We brought in.
Yeah, you did.
Yeah. We brought in the lions to someone like I was saying this the other day. I needed people to embody what Branded by Women's about. So I picked 3 people that I think fit the role. Because you've got to think about, this is a worldwide thing, and people come in different shapes, sizes, nationalities, and everything. And I think you 3 embody that. So I think there's something there for everyone. All right. Should we go now?
I don't ever want this to end.
You don't want it to end, do you? Yeah.
Just kidding. Yes, we should end. But yeah, thank you, Danny.
That's fine. How can people reach you?
They can reach me on any social media platform, Athena Severi, right? They can go to athenaseveri.com to connect with me. And then if they want to connect with Titan, they can go to titannetwork.com. But I'm here to help. Like anything anyone needs, I'm always here. And I answer all my private messages, which takes me hours, but I love it. So.
Excellent. Cool. Guys, join me again, 4 p.m. BST tomorrow. I'm back here with Kata's going to be joining me. We've got Mindset Sunday. Kata, Sharon, Evan will be here, Lee Van Hirschkorn and myself. And tomorrow we're going to be talking about searching perfection. Or searching for perfection. So I'll be back tomorrow. More details to follow for the shows for the rest of the week. Athena, thank you for joining us. Guys, thank you for giving up your time. Stay home. Stay safe. Love you loads. Take care.
Love you guys. Thank you.